a family of foundations that serve all of rural Minnesota. There are 6 of us, and we collectively, for the last 40 years, have been investing in partnership with other groups and organizations in the economic vitality of our respective regions. My region is south central, southeastern Minnesota, 20 counties, starting with like Fairmont and New Ulm and going east. Scott's got 18 counties starting in Hutchinson and going down to the Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota border. And all of us are engaged in early childhood. All of us are engaged in entrepreneurship. And again, our motto collectively is collaborating for regional vitality. We try to good partner with other groups and organizations that are working to invest in the future of rural. About 3 years ago, I asked the Center for Rural Policy and Development to do an analysis of the cost of living in rural Minnesota. They've done other wonderful research projects, and they are a partner in this project. They've done research on mental health issues, on rural health broadly, on early childhood needs in rural. They're a great partner. But the project I wanted them to pursue was the cost of living in rural, and I wasn't surprised with the results. When you do the numbers, you might get paid a little less if you work in most any profession in rural, but you come out money ahead. And that's because we have a lower cost of living, we have lower housing costs, and a variety of other factors. And a piece of that is the quality of life. You may work in 10 or 15 miles away, but you can get there in 10 or 15 minutes. That's not true if you live in the metro area. And so this study really inspired me to think, what could we do, especially in this aftermath of COVID, where so many people discovered they could work remotely, and now we're getting better broadband coverage all across rural. Why wouldn't they want to live in communities like Worthington, like Waseca, like Winona, southern Minnesota? And so I was brainstorming with Kerri Miller and Teresa McFarland about this idea of elevating conversations about rural from rural by rural residents. And so we're now in our 3rd year of those dialogues. We pick different topics in different towns, but it's your voice that's going to be heard. And among our partners, in addition to the funding partners, are Minnesota Public Radio. And so all of these conversations will be broadcast, so everybody that listens to public radio is going to hear what we have to say. I'm particularly excited about tonight. I've been wanting one of these conversations to be in Worthington on this very topic. So here we are, and so don't be shy about speaking up. But as Kerri warned you, if you don't speak up, she'll still probably stick the microphone in your face. So with that, my friend and colleague, Scott Marquardt.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. First and foremost, Brent and Cheryl and the family, hospitality, please help me thank them. Yeah. What this place stands for, family-owned business, Main Street, believing in rural, is the reason we wanted to have it here and to see a full room. This is a project that we're proudly involved in and proudly stand for the values that the Droll family has and their hope and passion for the community and what it means for the changing face of Worthington and Southwest Minnesota and everywhere else. So we're so grateful to have you all here. I'm so honored that I've got 3 members of my board, a number of staff, and so many friends from recent and far back here that are here too, and to see this place full is something we've been hoping for. I was able to go down to the State Fair when they had the first one of this. It was the Monday of the State Fair, and it was about 120, and why not do a radio show outside? It was fabulous, and the conversation went nonstop. So Kerri brings you the mic, please share, because to me this is all about the rural narrative and why we're here, and for all the people that are putting their own money at risk and their own passion at risk to believe in a better future for this town and this region is why we're all here. So please share, please talk. We've got some treats afterwards, so you won't want to leave. Definitely going forward, but we're just grateful for everyone that's here, all of our partners, folks here from the Worthington Area Community Foundation and the city and county and Minnesota West and so many other places that are here tonight. If there's anything that we can do to take care of you, let us know. But again, please stick around for dessert, and thank you for coming out on this night. It's my honor to turn it over to Kerri Miller, who's going to take us through an amazing evening.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Kerri Miller. This is Rural Voice, a series of conversations where we examine what it means to live and thrive in rural Minnesota. Our thanks to our season sponsors, Minnesota's Initiative Foundations, including the Southwest Initiative and Scott Marquardt, Otto Bremer Trust, the Duff Family Foundation, Minnesota Public Radio. For our season finale, we've come to the southwest corner of the state, to the Forbidden Barrel Brewery in Worthington. It's a great place, where this city's thriving future is inextricably linked to newcomers and immigrants. Now, some context on that last statement. In the mid-'80s, people were leaving Worthington. In fact, Worthington had about 8,000 people. Businesses were worried that they wouldn't be able to stay afloat. School enrollment was dropping fast. But then jobs opened up in the meatpacking industry, and people who came for those jobs decided that they liked the place, and they would put down roots and they would stay. Worthington now has a population close to 14,000. The school district has had to build extra classrooms. Main Street is bustling. In fact, the city council just raised their proposed levy so they can put money away for things like an ice arena and soccer fields. It is undeniable that these changes have been disorienting, troubling, exciting. Depends on kind of where you are on this. Some immigrants come with documents, others come without legal documents, including unaccompanied minors. And what's happening here in Worthington is happening in rural areas and towns all over the country, which is why it's really exciting that we're here tonight and we're here to listen to you. So here's where we begin. The road to a thriving rural community runs through welcoming newcomers, including immigrants. How does that happen? I'm gonna start, and she knew I was gonna start here, with Dulcie Adame Willardson. She, with her mother, owns Whip and Mix Bakery. Tell me a little bit about how you ended up here. You're from Mexico, right?
Yes, thank you so much for having us today. I'm from Mexico. I born and raised in a good-sized town in Mexico, state named Michoacan. I'm from La Piedad, that's the name of my town, the Mercy City. I went to school to be a psychologist. Cost of living and job opportunities, it was not working in Mexico. So I have to immigrate to USA 14 years ago. Exactly, I actually arrived here in September 16. It was Turkey Day, the holiday, the big holiday we're having here. So nobody told me. I thought that they were expecting me and there was a parade for me. It was not for me, it was for Turkey Day. So it was a life-changing. Year later, 2 years later, my father moved here. My father is the smartest guy that I know. Medical doctor, own a hospital in Mexico. Unfortunately, crisis financial situation. He had to leave everything and move here 2 years later after me and work in a meat packing plant for a year. It was difficult because his job was totally different than what it was right now at that time. It was a big change for us, and my mother knows this, and I tell them this all the time. It was the most difficult year of my life. Not because my dad was my roommate, because the stress, well, it was not easy, put it away. But seeing the change that it caused on my father, from being an MD and now doing something totally different that he was not expecting for him at his age. But Worthington brought us a lot of different opportunities here. My mother and my siblings moved here a year after my father, 3 years after me. Yeah? No, 3, something like that. They moved here. My sister's sitting over there. She went to school to be an engineer and architect. My brother moved here right in high school. We spoke English, but just, hi, how are you? My name is Dulce. That was it. And nobody told me that the slang that I have in Minnesota. My first job in here was in BK, in Burger King. So I remember one day working there. Well, first of all, I didn't know how to count money, and my first position, know how to count money. Sorry, I have to fix that. The USA currency, all the coins, I was not familiar with that. And I have to get familiar with that, seeing which one is 5, 10, 20. But I figure out. So one day, my manager at that time comes to me and said, "You betcha." Do you know how I felt when she said that? It felt, I didn't know what "you betcha" means. I thought that she said different word, B word to me. And I came back and I thought, I'm fired. So learned that I was doing great after. But started working at Unity House. I was a mental health practitioner there for 4 years. Then I worked at the Private Industry Council for a year and got to work as a child protection social worker for 5 years for Nobles County. Then got the opportunity to be the first forensic interviewer of this area. Now I'm currently managing the child advocacy program, and I'm very proud to say that I'm the only Spanish-speaking interviewer in the area. So sometimes I also get to go all the way to Rochester to interview kids. It's not an easy job, but I do it.
Tell me when you decided to start a business, because everything you've described is a big gamble. And then it's, we're going to leave our home country, we're going to come here, we're going to put roots down in this town, we know nobody, we don't speak the language, and now we're going to start a business.
Yeah. So everything started when we have an apple tree in our backyard that my husband decided he wanted an apple tree. Have too many apples. So I always like to bake. I wanted to be a chef when I was younger. I didn't have the opportunity because my father kind of wanted me to be a psychologist. So I had to go to psychology school. He invited me to have lunch one day, and he asked me, "What do you want to go to school after high school?" I told him that I wanted to be a chef, and he said, "Well, I think you have a lot of friends. I talk to you a lot. You start school in September to be a psychologist." So I have to put my dreaming aside. So have the apple tree in my backyard. We have too many apples, so like I said, I love to bake, so I started baking pies and empanadas. People like them. Next year, got ready, got way too many orders. I asked my mother if she wanna help me with that, and she said yes. Should we add one more thing to our menu? Let's do it. So we started just taking orders. My sister helped me to create my logo and the name. She didn't even ask me, she just named us Whip and Mix. So we're Whip and Mix.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. The rest is history. She's been following me. My mother working with me. I come with my crazy ideas. She has never said no. We start taking orders. Then one day it's like, should we have our a in-home kitchen bakery open to the public every Saturday? Really, Dulce? Why not? Okay, let's do it. Then people start saying, I wish I can have a coffee in your backyard. Now we have a in-home bakery and a backyard cafe open every Saturday.
Let me ask you this. Maybe I should ask your sister this. How about if we get her in on this too? Here's what I want to know. How many people do you think who interact with your family know the story and what it took to put down roots and make a life here?
Not a lot, and I wish that there were more.
Tell me why.
Because everyone has a story, and if you hear everyone's story, you will change your mind, and you will become more smart, you'll have more conversations, and everything will be better.
Tell me, when you say, if you hear the story, you'll change your mind, you're suggesting that some minds need to be changed. Why?
Definitely, because everyone has different challenges that you don't realize until you hear them. And for some people, life can be really easy, but once you hear all these challenges that all these people went through, even that is a successful story like my sister, you realize that life is not easy, and everyone has different stories. Yeah.
All right, thank you. How many people in the room knew the story of how Dulce, her sister, her family got here? How many people did not know? No, lots of people saying, no, ma'am, all right. Tell me what you think. To the woman behind you. Yes. Don't be scared. Janet, you were shaking your head. You'd never heard that before.
No, I did not. And
What does it say to you?
I guess I'm just surprised. You know, you don't realize how many of them are very educated when they come here and how creative they are in starting their businesses.
Did you grow up here, or have you lived here you grew up in Worthington?
Well, close by.
How has the city changed since you've grown up here?
It's very different. It's becoming a little bit more liberal than it used to be. It used to be extremely conservative.
How does it feel, do you think, to see, I don't know, in your everyday life, going into businesses, maybe showing up for school events, to see people who their families weren't here 40 or 50 years ago, but they've put down roots here and they're making a life? How is that? How does that feel?
See, I like the diversity. You know, we've been other places, and it feels very different. It feels strange to go to some places when all you see are Caucasians. And you miss not hearing the different languages, and people seem happy and outgoing. I don't know, they're much more positive.
Janet, thank you. Good to have your view. And I appreciate you volunteering. I'm coming right over here to Jenny. Jenny, tell me kind of your name and where you're from.
So my name is Jenny Jimenez. I'm originally from Heron Lake, and I moved to Worthington.
Let me come back to that question that I asked. Do you think a lot of people who live in communities where immigrants come, again, start businesses, put down roots, stay maybe for a season or two, understand the story behind what brought them to a community like this?
So, I mean, for us, we were probably one of the few Hispanic families in Heron Lake, which is a very small town. And it's very different to hear the different stories of surrounding communities that are dealing with the same thing. Again, as he mentioned, the low cost of living is really intricate to the immigrants around here. Working in a financial institution, there is a bridge gap of financial literacy. So hearing their stories, and I hear them time and time again throughout my work history, it's humbling. It very is. And I mean, Worthington is more diverse. It's changed in the time that I was a kid, because I was born and raised here, but my parents are immigrants from Mexico.
Do you have a sense that that change has been as welcome as one would expect? What do you think? Do you hear people tell you that from the immigrant community, that they've encountered what we would say is a kind of an attitude of, you're not welcome here, you're not wanted here?
Not precisely. I've heard it from both sides. Growing up in a community when I was younger is predominantly white, Caucasian, and they were welcoming to us. I mean, I've never been discriminated against or anything like that, but I've heard stories from certain customers, and then you hear the whisperings around communities as well of, about the immigration issue. Just because it's getting more and more, I mean, it's evolving. So, I mean, we're not gonna see a change anytime soon. They're gonna still see the opportunities that Worthington has to offer. It's not changing anytime soon.
Who can speak to, you lived here a long time, the town was fading, dying, and the people who have come here, decided to stay, have really re-energized the town. Ma'am, did you grow up here? Nope. Have you lived here a long time? Don't try to get me to go away. I won't. 1971. Oh, that's a long time. How does the change feel?
Well, I wear a lot of hats. I'm a registered nurse. I'm retired now, but I worked at the hospital here in Worthington for 48 years. Plus, I taught at Minnesota West, taught the nursing clinicals, which, by the way, is the best college around. And yeah, it is. And then I volunteer at Prairie Elementary School in the second grade classroom. And most of the students in her classroom are Hispanic. I'd say almost all of them in that one classroom.
And how has that been received?
To who? To me?
Yeah. You, your friends, the community in general?
There's two sides. Now, to me, I think it's wonderful. But it's very hard because many of the students that come into her classroom have never been to school before. They can't afford it where they live. And a lot of them don't speak English. So as a volunteer, I'm supposed to help them with math and reading. And I do speak a little Spanish, but I think overall, Prairie Elementary, it just was chosen as a school of excellence, I think. And they do very well. I'm very impressed with the school system in Worthington.
We have some people here from the school district, and I know that has been challenging because accommodating a lot of new kids, working on the budget, finding enough money to educate kids. Yes, I'm coming over here. Yeah. Lori, to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Lori Dudley. I've been on the school board for 22 years. We came to Worthington probably 35, 36 years ago, so not from here, but gonna stay for a couple years and fell in love with Worthington. At that time, there was a slogan with the chamber, "You'll come to love us," and we came to love Worthington. And we had 4 kids that came through the district here, and they loved telling their story of Worthington. Just the population of Worthington, the diversity, the changes. It's a microcosm of so much that is just vibrant.
What has it been like to be on the school board over this arc of time where you've really had to face up to some budget issues, right? Figure out how to solve them. Tell me a little bit about the conversation that goes on around some of the decisions that have to be made.
Well, we had 5 failed referendums in 6 years just to get space that we needed for our growing population of students. But at the same time, with the students comes the per pupil funding. So we had the money, we just couldn't get a referendum passed. And then we finally did. And so now we're pretty close to having enough space for all our students. We're a little short at the high school, but we feel like we have the programming in place. We have teachers that are second to none in this state that embrace all our kids no matter what, and English second language teachers that just take them all in, and we do the best we can to provide programming if it's new to country or if they come with an education but they don't have the English, or they don't have an education and they don't have the English. We just have programming that we can help.
Who can speak to why it took 6 times to pass a referendum for more money for the schools? I mean, obviously education is, everybody's like, not me. Scott? Yeah. Why don't you speak to that? Because I know what I've read about the reason. Why don't you come out here away from the... Why did it fail 5 times?
I don't have a lot of the information related to why it failed 5 times or not, but as I think about Kerri and the narrative that's being, shared here tonight in the community, there's just so much investment in small business and so much investment in real estate and so much investment in place things right now. I'm grateful to the school for continuing to push for the referendum and to push for the funding to provide that incredible education that this school district provides to the folks in the community. But I think for me, there's just a lot to unpack with that question. And yeah, I would love to hear more from locals in that space.
That was such a dodge, man. That was such a dodge. That's getting edited out, Scott, right now. All right, come on. Talk to me. Talk to me candidly. Weren't there residents of Worthington who were saying, why should we pay our taxes to educate people who are not from here, who came from somewhere else? Why should we spend more money on that? Who was my school board, the other school board person? Yes. Where is she? Yeah. Was there somebody raising their hand back here? Okay, coming over to you because you're running for the school board.
But I didn't live here at the time.
Okay, gotcha. Who else can speak to this? I think it's pretty important. Yeah, good. Take one for the team. Okay, you are.
I'm Dan Grieve, born and raised in Worthington, and I think it's multifactor why they failed early on until the state legislature fixed how ag land was taxed. The farmers carried a big burden, would have carried a big burden until the ag to school credits came around. So that helped, I think, pass some of the first rounds of after the multiple failures, then they passed. And then there's also just the immigrant, the concept or the perception of the diversity and the changing of the community. So I mean, it's a fact, unfortunately, but it was out there.
What's the conversation sound like that goes something like this? We don't want new people here. We don't want people here who we don't recognize, whose families haven't been here for a long time. Our town is dying. We need new people. Where are those new people coming from? Somewhere else. I mean, isn't that kind of how the discussion goes?
Absolutely. Having been, I've lived away from Worthington for a few years, but been back here for probably almost 30 years now. But when I graduated in high school in '87, my family went through the farm crisis, and the Worthington community went through the farm crisis, and exactly, it was a shrinking town, and we had to have, and my job is we're a business that serves the ag community, and as farms have gotten larger and more specialized, they need a lot of labor, and the immigrant community has come in and filled that gap on labor on not only the pork processing plant here, but a lot of the farms, and we work with a lot of those workers, and they do a great job on the farms.
One of the things we're trying to tease out here is whether the change that has come to Worthington has been welcomed, tolerated, embraced. Who else has lived here for a long time? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jean Johnson. I've lived here almost my entire life. I was born here. I'm going to be pretty blunt to say that I grew up with not all my grandparents. I have two sets of grandparents where they said, why should we have to pay for their kids? And so I think we should be honest about that conversation. It hasn't always been welcomed at first, but when I think about my grandfather who made these same comments, he started school speaking German. And he started school, and his friend Leanne told me, yeah, here comes this redhead, and he didn't speak a lick of English. And they lived in a community where they were all German. They stuck together. His other friend George said, we had one Englisher coming to town, and we got him out right away. And so I think we forget where we come from, and we forget that we all have biases, and it's important that we recognize those biases and talk about them and just pretend like they don't exist. And so I'm going to be blunt and say that's what was being said. That's why we didn't get that referendum passed.
We're having this discussion at a time when the political conversation is also representative of what happens when people from outside the United States come in, settle in a town, go to work there, and you hear the difficulty of that. You can hear that in the political conversation right now of how the town, how the community, how the state, the leaders wrestle with that. So without going through all the details of what's being said about Springfield, Ohio, what I do want to ask is whether there is something that resonates maybe uncomfortably, maybe, you know, somewhere kind of deep inside that you kind of have to face up to. Can somebody speak to me about what it's been like to hear that discussion there and live in a town where a similar thing, change is happening? It's disorienting for some people. Amy, yeah, you're perfect for this. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've lived in Worthington.
Okay, I'm Amy Watalowitz, and I've lived in Worthington for about 14 years, but grew up in a nearby town, so I've lived in southwest Minnesota most of my life. But so when I watch the news, I think that is probably not the accurate narrative of what's really happening in that community, because Worthington has been a victim of that in the past when one of the referendums wasn't going through, and then there was a bus driver that was interviewed, and that made the national news. And it's like this, I'm not saying there's parts of that happen, but it's not how I'd say the majority of the people feel. I mean, one day I went to the post office and I stood in line 15 minutes because somebody needed to get a passport, and they didn't understand the language and they didn't know how to communicate. Then I went from there to the Department of our DVS, and I stood in line about a half an hour because people who didn't know how to speak English were trying to get their licenses. And then I went from there to the clinic, and I stood in line 20 minutes there, and I thought, wow, the people that service these positions all day long, it has to be exhausting, and it has to be exhausting for the people who are trying to get their feet, you know, grounded here in Worthington. So I just think that there's a lot of people that really want the diversity and really enjoy the diversity. I mean, my grandson is in a kindergarten class, and he's got 19 students in his class, and he's the only white child. And it's just kind of a reversal. But I think it's a beautiful thing in our community, and I don't think that the national narrative is accurate for what's happening locally.
I'm Kerri Miller. You're listening to Rural Voice. We're in Worthington, Minnesota. We're at the Forbidden Barrel Brewery, and we're having a discussion about how communities reach out to be more welcoming to newcomers and people who are immigrating from different parts of the world. I want to ask another question about that bus driver article, because when I was preparing for this conversation, of course, that's one of the first things that popped up. And it does not portray Worthington. Now, there were plenty of other, but who remembers that article and what it was like to, what it was it embarrassing?
Jerry Fiola, and I've lived in Worthington all my life, 75 years. And so that article was embarrassing because we knew it didn't capture, but one of the reasons I think Worthington has done fairly well adjusting to this is back when the demographics started changing, when you talked about the mid-1980s and the out-migration of people, and JBS at that time, it was SWIFT or SIPCO, and they were recruiting people and they couldn't. The mayor convened a group in the community representing a lot of the different organizations that service, the ministerium, family services, the community action agency, the school district, to try to prepare the community for this adjustment. And the focus was on 3 elements. One is preparing people, the population that had been there for a number of years, what it was going to be like to living with folks and understanding those different cultures. For the people who were diverse, we had a number of outreach efforts to reach out to them, to provide them, to make their transition into this different community and this strange culture as easy as possible. And then a third strategy was to bring those people together, and so you start to have people meet one another. That was the Cultural Diversity Coalition, and that was the start. It was that group that proposed the International Festival, which we now have. But back to your article, so with this Cultural Diversity Coalition, we also had some things, some articles like that popped up, and one of them popped up in the local newspaper, the Daily Globe. The Daily Globe editor had taken a position endorsing what the Cultural Diversity Coalition had done and trying to reach out to these communities and basically endorsing the change in Worthington as well as trying to meet these folks. And he received a vitriolic letter to him, almost threatening his family, and that piqued his interest. So he decided to do a survey, a random survey, invited people to respond. And then they excerpted from the letters hateful sentences, and they published them in the Daily Globe. And so people were upset on this, and so what happened is we had this Cultural Diversity Coalition. Ultimately, we had 100 members from the community, including members of the diverse community, who were working on 10 problematic areas for making this transition. Everything from accessing medical services, to interacting with the police force, to housing, to creating friendships cross-culturally. We had all sorts of different task force. And at the time, then, while we were trying to do all this work to bridge this gap, they printed, so I'm gonna be blunt. So one of the sentences that was excerpted in that newspaper was, "We should do to the Mexicans what Hitler did to the Jews."
So that was published in the newspaper.
And I can tell you, as a result of that, and then there was something else, there was some individuals from the community who filed a complaint with the journalism board regarding standards, and they found against the Globe. I'm not trying to badmouth the Globe, but just for basically publishing unsigned letters to the editor. And there was another one where actually there was a letter to the editor that supposedly had a couple sentences changed.
But what we're getting at here, Jerry, is there was a representation of a part of the community that felt that way back then.
Yes, they did. And so another thing that happened, CARE TV came down from the Twin Cities. And they flew down here. They had a helicopter, flew in here. They did a video, a man on the street kind of thing, down Main Street, Worthington. And we said, when they, and I've got a copy of that video, and we said they could have not, they couldn't have found, I don't know how they found these folks who were so bigoted, but it was embarrassing, because at the same time, we didn't know that didn't speak to the entire community. And that's the same way that was really frustrating about that, the bus driver article that appeared in the Washington Post that really misrepresented, you know, you are gonna hear the stories. You're gonna have the stories of the woman who shared about her grandparents. And Worthington's not the perfect community. But in all honesty, I think the community has done quite well, because there has been a culture of acceptance here in this community. It goes back, and you maybe know the story, you maybe don't, but Worthington was the first city in post-war Germany, or post-World War II, to adopt a sister city from Germany. First one in the country. And so that kind of creates a culture. The other thing, if you've lived here all your life, when I was a sophomore in high school, dislocated black employees from Armours who were from a plant that was shut down in Kansas City, they were relocated here, and it was a successful relocation. In fact, we were on the front page of the Ebony and Jet magazine, and George Schultz, in an article, I would refer you to this article. He wrote an article for the Washington Post. It was a guest editorial, and he identified the 10 examples or his experiences in his lifetime which proved about trust in a community, and one of them was when he was negotiating as part of a labor relations board in Worthington, Minnesota.
Okay. All right. That's a lot of history. Jerry, you're the best. Thank you. But something you said, I want to advance the conversation with. That was very interesting to hear about the mayoral strategy, the task forces. So this is what I want to ask you as we kind of push on through the discussion. What really works, do you think, to welcome people when they put down roots, to ensure that as they are thriving, the city is thriving? What do you think really works for that? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bill Keitel. I have a small business a block from here, and I also live a block in the other direction from here, so I'm kind of familiar with this area. I've been here for 52 years. I witnessed the 1980s and the farm crisis and a community that was almost withering. And I'm here, and as a hobby, I guess I'm an anthropologist. And when I get up every morning, it's like opening the National Geographic magazine. I can walk to work, and what works is to learn how to say hello in as many languages that shows up in this community. There's 64 different languages spoken at the high school. And I was able, at one time I was able to say hello in 11 of them. But the point is, these people, years ago we were written up in the Wall Street Journal too, having people from the South Sudan and Eritrea and Ethiopia and Myanmar. And to learn and meet these people, being able to say hello in their own language is a sign of friendship. Mm-hmm. And as a small businessman and manufacturer, and landlord, I might add, these people have become our salvation. And to have someone in the community that's so small-minded to not recognize that is troubling. And for the most part, I think we've made great strides, and indeed we recognize we've made mistakes along the way. Immigration isn't easy, and yet we've got what I feel is an accommodating community that learns from their mistakes.
Okay. What works? We've heard being neighborly. What else? What do you think? Tell us who you are.
I'm Sandy Pullis, and I'm not from the community, here to listen and learn. And we're one solution to reach out to different communities. We run AmeriCorps programs and work closely with a variety of AmeriCorps programs that bring community members together to solve different areas of concerns, whether that's education, housing, and here to just learn more about what the needs are and how we could be a part of that solution.
I want to talk to Brent, who runs the Forbidden Barrel Brewery that we're here in. Brent, I want to, wow. You're a big deal here. Must be the pizza and the nachos. I want to ask you in a minute about the story of your business, but I want you to reflect for a minute on what really works to weave a community together when people are a little uncomfortable, disoriented with the kind of changes that are happening in the community.
Boy, that's probably a loaded question. I wish I had the exact answer to that. But when we started the brewery here as a brew pub, our focus was on bringing people together to sit down at the tables, get to know your neighbors, your friends. That's been the history of brew pubs for thousands of years, is for people to get together with the people that live around them and get to know them, get to understand them, and eventually become good friends. And I think that since we came to town, I've heard so many stories from different individuals, whether they're from countries that they escaped from war to come over to Worthington here and meet up with their families, to having to sneak out of their country to escape some of the oppression and the governmental things that were happening. And it brings you to a new light with being able to understand where they were coming from. But I think it has to go both ways in understanding that, like Jean was talking about, my grandparents came over from Norway and Germany. And at that time, a Norwegian and a German, that's not really a good mix, 70 years ago. And now that doesn't exist anymore. And so that's my hope for the future, is that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, some of this stuff that we're talking about today, I hope is past us and that we've grown from it.
Well said. A quick question here. You opened the brew pub in 2019. Would the business survive if Worthington wasn't changing?
I think everybody has to keep changing, not just Worthington, the people, the community, the businesses, the thought processes, everything has to keep changing, or you become stagnant and you won't survive. I mean, that's kind of rule number one in business, is to keep growing as a business and keep finding new and better ways to do things, better ways to serve the public, and meet what the public wants and needs. And that has always been our goal number one with the brew pub. Is you can see in here is we don't have a lot of TVs. We discussed taking people's cell phones away at the door, and we said that one wouldn't have probably been very popular, but it's one of those things when I see people come in and sit down as a young couple and they share a pizza and a beer and the phone stays in their pocket or purse, it's a little warm in my heart. When they sit there with their two phones out and they don't talk to each other the entire time, I get a little worried for their future. And so I think the same thing happens with us as a community.
Well, very well said. Who else will speak to what works and when do we know it's working? So I added that to you. You are Eric. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Eric Parrish. I have taught music and theater at Minnesota West Community and Technical College for 17 years. I also was the director of the high school musical for 7 years locally. And I'm the conductor of Worthington Chamber Singers, and I'm also the conductor of First Choir at First Lutheran Church.
Surprised you have time to be here, but good.
I'm also running for school board.
There's so many school board candidates here tonight. So what are you thinking about those questions?
I think one of the things that's very unique about this community, and actually the thing that brought me here 17 years ago, is our strong arts in our community. We have an excellent marching band. We have outstanding music teachers in our schools. We have a community symphony. We have a community chamber singers that I conduct. But we also have many, many groups who make music and make art, and which is representative of where they come and who they are and their identity. And I think, we can say the cliche phrase that music is culture and it's the universal language, etc., but it does bring us together in a way that allows us to experience who one another is in a very unique and personal way that is generally accepted as a way of expression, right? And so we have the International Festival, and we have our Turkey Day Festival, we have the Regatta. All of these things center around music. And they center around the talents and the uniqueness of everyone in our community. And when you go to one of these events, there's everything from country to native dance to bluegrass to classical to whatever. And that's a really unique thing here. So I serve on some state arts board panels, etc. And often when I'm in those conversations, diversity is still a theoretical thing to many people who don't live here. And when I'm speaking, in other universities, etc., I have a unique experience of our diversity is not a dichotomy. It's a plethora. There's so many, as Bill was saying, many languages, many cultures, and that there's no one thing that is the other. Everybody's an other here. And when everybody becomes an other, it cancels out the negative connotation of being other, right? And now it becomes a bouquet of beautiful things and represents people in a very unique and individual way, but also on a subject that everybody can experience and have together. As a music teacher, I've had to absolutely change the way that I do what I do, right? My Western canon musical references don't exist for many of the students that I see. And so I've had to rethink in my classroom, how do I approach teaching something that has been taught to me in my history, in my academic upbringing, but now I'm having to really think about what it is that I'm trying to communicate and trying to teach and present that in a more universal way than it was presented to me. And that is a challenge that all of our teachers are facing, that all of our businesses are facing.
And it can be uncomfortable, right?
And it's hard, and you're gonna fail at it. And you have to kind of get over the fact that you're gonna fail and get up and try again. And I really think that's what's unique about this community.
Well said, well said. Jean, I'm coming back to you because I want the straight talk. When do we know it's working, and where are we on the spectrum of it's working, it's a stutter kind of, we're back and forth? What do you think?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but I think there's a lot of people here that get to see all the good parts. I've worked in child protection. I work as a therapist as well with many different cultures. And so there's still a lot of room for us to reach out and get to know our neighbors. When it's working, I think when we see this room filled up with more diversity than just what you see here today.
Thank you. Who else can talk to me about it's working and that's how we know, or we're not quite there? Yes, Glendy, coming to you. Tell us about yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Glendy. I work for the global market and UCAP. What was the question again? Sorry, you caught me off guard.
Did I scare you? I'm sorry. Think about the way Worthington is. Think about some of the progress. Think about some of the work that still needs to be done. Where are we on that journey?
We're working on it. We, at the food shelf, have been seeing a large number of Haitian immigrants that have been coming here from Florida. And I know they've been having a hard time being accepted, especially with some comments that are made of what's going on in Springfield, Ohio. I know some people have been affected by that, but we're working on it, and I know that just by being helpful to them the best we can, and receiving them with open arms and just giving them some time to express themselves is the best we can do, and just continue working on that.
Who else on this? Yes.
You all the time.
Thank you.
My name is Leticia Rodriguez Orletti. I ran for county commissioner. Listening to all the conversations, there's an ebb and flow of I'm going to be brutally honest, racism. Mr. Fiola, I was in town when that was happening. Yes. But what's working is ask the city about the economic impact the communities of color have, housing. I mean, when Walmart was not here when I arrived, this town has grown. the banks, all these people, they're hiring more people that are bilingual. The young lady, you have to realize that we're not all immigrants. These young people were born here. So we're looking at second and third generation that were born and raised here. I am a Texan, so I'm not an immigrant unless Texas is another country. But, so the impact that the community is having, it would not be like this if it weren't, unfortunately, JBS, love it or hate it, is here. It gives a lot of money to the community. They have JBS Field House, houses. Bill will say he has apartments. So all this community has changed from being owned by Caucasians to people of color, all of this area. They're moving to the more pricey and private properties. So the impact that the city's having with housing and stores and restaurants and everything, the people that are being hired in the county, in the city, and the hospitals. So that's the impact that our immigrant community is having. So that's how you know it's changing. So you ask people, because money doesn't have a color. It doesn't care what color you are. Money is money. It's green. So you're going to spend here, you're going to spend there, and that's how it changes. And that's how you know. But there is still a lot of, like I said, there's ebb and flow of racism. It comes and goes. It comes and goes. There's hidden racism. It seems to be a little more accepting, and then it changes to like when Mr. Fiola said, "Yeah, I was here when they were saying put them in gas chambers." It was bad. It was really bad. Then it got better, and then it got again. So it's an ebb and flow. But we're not. These young people are not immigrants. They were born and raised here. Eugenio, this young girl. So we're already. You're looking at second and third generation. They're not immigrants anymore. So
thank you. Thank you. Who? Yes, right over there. Hi. You are?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Suri Porn Sampamitwong, but I go by Suri for short. And my family immigrated to the United States when I was 7 years old, so I've been here for 23 years now. And I can share you what worked for me because I can't speak for other people. But what helped me, to give some context, my mom is a single mother, so she won the lottery visa. She was a teacher and a high school counselor in Thailand before she decided to give that all away, sell our house, and move us here. So just like a lot of other families, she worked at JBS when we moved to Worthington. And because she worked the night shift, me and my brother, I was in 3rd grade and he was like in 7th grade. And we were, raising ourselves. And was it legal at the time to be alone like at that age? Probably not, who knows? But my mom was trying her best to survive. And what helped me was I had friends that took me in as family. So I encourage you, like when you see, your kids and they have newcomers as friends, I invite you to invite them to come in, join your family, take them on trips, because that's what saved me. There were moments where I just needed guidance and I needed things to do. I wanted to go on family trips. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I joined a church in 5th grade just so I can take family trips. And I know, please forgive me, God, but at the time, I just, we couldn't afford to go on summer trips, so I would go to Camp Shatak and I got baptized and I had no idea what I was doing. But that's what I meant is just adopt them into your family, show them, teach them your values, because that will transfer till now. I owe it to my 4 childhood friends who all adopted me, and also teachers. I joined so many clubs because the teachers made me feel seen and supported. My 5th grade teacher is the one who inspired me to continue to this day to journal. I have 50 diaries. When I die, I told my friend she could publish it. I don't care if people know my secret because I'll be dead. But what I'm saying is that she impacted me that much. So for teachers, you're doing an amazing job continuing to care, because it does make a difference. So, yeah.
Sorry, you still live in Worthington?
So I bought a house in Round Lake last year, but I work and my nonprofit is in Worthington.
And have you considered Yes, I had that experience there. It's my hometown. I'm getting the hell out because I want to live. Or, I mean, what is it that about this community that keeps you here?
So funny enough you said that. When I was, okay, I'm just gonna be real. The minute I graduated high school, I moved away. And I did that because as much as I owe gratitude to the teachers and my friends that helped raise me, I wanted to be in a space where I can be creative. And I just felt like at that time, I graduated in 2013. So at that time, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And since I was 8, that's all I could ever talk about. And some of my high school teachers vouched for that. So I moved to LA, worked there, lived there for about 3.5 years. And then I had a mental health crisis, which led me to be hospitalized. And after being there for a week, my mom physically moved me back home. And then I was later diagnosed with a mental illness, which was hard for me to reconcile with. But now I embrace it because I have it. I understand what it's like to struggle with having a mental illness. And because of that, I have the empathy for people who don't even know that they have a mental illness and they're struggling and they're misunderstood. So that's why, like, I want to encourage all of you to come with curiosity and compassion, because a lot of these kids, like, they have so much unprocessed, unhealed trauma that was thrown at them, and they're just trying to survive, and they might misbehave and they might outlash, but what they need, those kids the most, need love the most. So I just ask you to be more curious and compassionate.
Thank you. Glad you were here tonight. Can I also suggest that being willing to share a story like that, being openly vulnerable, that's part of also what kind of weaves a community together, right? Who'd like to speak to that? Yes, sir. I was about to land on somebody, but you saved them. Right. Yes, you are Blake.
Yes. My name is Blake Rainier. I've been in Worthington 7 years. I'm married to that one.
The music teacher.
Yes, I'm married to the music teacher. In my role, I teach 9th through 12th grade English language arts, and I always come back to when I'm teaching speech units or intrapersonal communication, the idea of whether we're listening to respond or are we listening to understand. And when we take ourselves into that vulnerable place and call deep on our courage to reach out in a spirit of understanding listening, that very much so flips what's happening, what the conversation is, and its transformative power of listening to understand is something that has the power to bind us together, to grow us. Because it's not, in my mind, it's not just about bringing us together, it's once we're together, now what?
I want to bring you guys along on every town hall. Oh my gosh, it's so fantastic. All right, who else can speak to that? To we know it's working when? Yes, perfect. I don't think I got your name earlier.
Cristina.
Sister of Dulce.
Yes. So I think we have a long path to go still. I don't think it's working completely. But, sorry, I'm taking notes. I think if you listen, don't judge, learn, teach, keep your feet on the ground and be a human, we can destroy that big wall that we have to destroy. And then it will be working.
What do you think about what Blake said? Less, I'm seeing you speak at me, but I'm thinking about the next thing I'm going to say. True, receptive, kind of generous listening. Is that important, do you think?
Yes, I think life is too busy for everyone at this point that we don't take the time to really listen to people. And if we take 5 minutes to listen to our neighbor, we'll be so good. And we can help each other a lot just to listen in someone for 5 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's right.
Yes, my name is Marilyn. I definitely agree with what Christina said. It's been a struggle. I've only been in Worthington for about 1 year and 2 months. I moved here from Duluth, Minnesota. That's where I studied for 5 years. But originally, I am Congolese, but I grew up in South Africa. Yeah, I'm mostly introverted, so being outside hasn't been easy, but likewise, coming from a busy city like Johannesburg, there's always something to do. So you almost feel proud being an introvert because it's like I'm choosing to stay indoors. I'm a holy child. But here in Worthington, it's a struggle because what is there to do? You know, I've gotten used to sleeping at 9 p.m. And it makes it difficult to meet new people, especially young people. I just got out of college. I still want to rage and do irresponsible things, but still be responsible.
Here's something I want to ask you about. I'm struck by what one of our participants said about being reaching out to people. Like Suri was saying, if you see this, kind of do something about it, reach out. Have you been the recipient of that? Could there be more?
I have not. I think it's been in situations where a diverse person recognizes another that I've received that. Suri is one of those people. Christina is one of those people. Jesse is an exception. But most of the people I've met are diverse, and I think we meet on that middle ground. And that's where we're able to have those vulnerable conversations because we know the stigmas associated with our people, and we know how we're being perceived. So from there, we start the conversation of how can we be better for ourselves and be perceived better by the other. So I do think people are thinking about that a little bit more. So I'm glad that the idea is there in Worthington. Is it being implemented? No, and I don't know if it's because not a lot of people are thinking that way or are ready to put in the work to do that. But
okay, let me ask you the question then that I kind of posed, which is, I'll know it's working when I see people doing
X.
Hang on one sec.
I will know it's working when I see. There's too much to say. I don't know.
Okay, think about it for a minute. Now, yes, ma'am, Glendy.
I know it's working when at my employer I don't feel like I'm being pushed out. A previous employer, the leadership has changed drastically. The person who was there before, the previous director, she was very involving with including people from diverse countries like Mexico, Guatemala, Ethiopia. And then when she left, the new leadership started pushing us out. At one time, I was part of the leadership, but then eventually it was just all Caucasian. And that led me to leave that employer. So once we don't have people pushing others out, that's when I know it's working.
I'll know it's working when I'm part of the people that are making the decisions. Okay. Who was yelling from back here? Oh, my friend, yes. You were saying, I want to hear this.
You know when it's working when people can vote for somebody based not, so Shiniko Johnson, who is the city council in St. Paul, ran locally, and I knew she wasn't gonna win because the last name Johnson, but the first name Shaniqua. When I ran for county commissioner, I knew I had a chance in hell to win because my name is Leticia Rodriguez. I know a lot of people here, I know a lot of people in this room, but as much as I tried to connect with the farmers, no. So it was a lesson learned, but until people, there's nobody in the city, in the school board, or the county that's a person of color. But there also needs to be education in that aspect of not just because you're in that position, you have the whole power. Because when I was running door knocking, they said, oh, when you get to be a county commissioner, you can do this. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So there's a lot of education.
Let me just, yes, coming back to you, Dulcie. Let me make sure I heard that right. There is no one in city, county leadership who is a person of color? Oh. We'll know it's working when the leaders, the community leaders look like us? What, ma'am? You're muttering.
No school administrator is a person of color in a district that is almost completely. We have a few teachers of color. We've tried to recruit teachers of color. We've had a hard time keeping our teachers of color.
Can anyone explain why this is?
I would like to have people of color around them. You were saying? My name is Conchita. Sometimes they don't like to have other people who is the color, how that is going to teach my kid. You know, they don't see you as a teacher. They don't believe, like she said, she came from, his dad is a doctor, her dad. I was a secretary and I work in that plan also because it's nothing for me because they don't give me opportunities. Later on I learned and I came and become who I am now, but they see you and they don't believe that you can be as good as them or even better sometimes. Because we have those people. A lot of people in this community, they are very, very good. And they can be in position of power, but they don't give you the opportunity. We never have a chair on the table. We never had that.
We'll know it's working when leadership, the jobs that we're qualified for, are filled with people that look like us. What do you think, Dulcie?
I think that we need to understand that it's not if it's people of color or not. We're just people. And then we need to stop seeing us immigrant. And you are, where are you from? What brought you here? I'm Dulce. This is what I can do. This is what I know how to do. And this is what I'm good at it. That's it. Starting with people of color, people from here, that needs to stop. And it's gonna be working when then stop categorizing. When you buy a picture of a landscaping, which one you buy? The one that has more colors or the black and white? That's who we are. We are a color community. That needs to stop. We're a community. We have a lot of talents. We have a lot of good people in here. That's how it has to be looked at it, not for people in color. Because we are, all of us will come from the same place, and we're going to the same place. We have hands, eyes, heart, brains. We are all equal, and that's what should matter.
Wow. Well said. Does anybody, we've been going more than an hour, which the whole thing will go out on a podcast, but we will edit this down too for broadcast a bit. Who else would like to speak to this before we wrap things up? Yes, sir.
Not one that speaks very long, but I think a piece of this kind of weaving that we have here is the ability to see multiple truths. I think at the same time, I think that's where a lot of people struggle, that, you know, one thing can be true and another thing can be true, and that can both be just as valuable.
Yeah. Jose, would you like to speak to that? Right. I saw your name tag. What about, we know it's working when?
Well, when you feel comfortable in the community, like I said, like even this weekend, I got invited by an Ethiopian family to a wedding, so it was exciting for me. I never been to a wedding, so with a family like that, so to me it was a good feeling. And also the food, it was, like I said, it was a different kind of food that I usually use, like I'm used to. So it's an exciting moment. I think of being open. I think being open to open, like I said, to other cultures. I think for me, I get to see a lot of people, and at the festival, I'm the photographer for the festival, so so that's a plus for me, and so I get to experience and I've been here since 1990 in Worthington. I came here in the United States when I was 12 years old by myself. So, yep.
Do you feel welcome?
I think at first it was not as much, but now I feel more like. I can tell from I went to different schools, and one school I was the only one that, like I said, I was from a different country, the only one in class. But so now when I went to high school here in Worthington, it changed over the time, and I had we had in the ESL class, I had students from different countries, so we were working together to learn English.
Excellent. Who else? Some last thoughts? Yes.
Hello, my name is Pham Thi Hua. I am not from Worthington, but my father and my family came to Minnesota in 1975. He taught me something. When after the Vietnam War, he decided to come to Minnesota, and we were kind of lingering in the refugee camp for like 9 months to go to Minnesota. Where's Minnesota? The coldest place in the United States. And he had many reasons. One of the reasons that he said to us is very cold, very, very cold here. But when people live in an extreme weather climate, we help each other. There's a sense of community. And that was one of the key reasons that he selected to come here. I left this state for grad school, and I went away to work in different parts of the world. I came back here 10 years ago because I had 2 young sons, and I was living in France at that time. And I decided to come back to Minnesota because, for the same reason that my father chose, it's a place where people help each other. It's a place with a strong sense of community. And he also taught me something else, is that getting back to your question, how do I know when it works? I know when it works when none of us, whether of our identities or where we come from, that we don't have an inferiority complex. I know that it works when none of us, no matter where we come from or what is our ideologies, that we don't have a superiority complex.
Well said. I can't think of a better place to close. Thank you. Thank you. You guys have been amazing. I knew this was going to be my favorite town hall. Don't tell anybody. But it's just been great. Thank you so much for your candor and your insight and your experiences and your willingness to speak up and keep the conversation going. Again, airs on Tuesday at 9 a.m. on Minnesota Public Radio. The whole thing goes out on the podcast. So I hope you'll listen. Feel free to send me feedback. Now there are goodies from Whip and Mix, the thing I've been looking forward most. Yeah.
I hope you're able to stay, and if you'd like another beverage, it's open. You don't need a ticket. So you gave your evening to tell the narrative. So Southwest Initiative Foundation is very grateful for that. The team up there will take care of you, but please stay and continue it going. So thank you, Kerri.